just close that down. And what we're going to do is do a cloud layer over the top. So with the geometry selected, we're going to right click and just hit clone. And we want to clone it. We'll rename it as clouds and as a copy, not an instance. And we'll go OK to that. And then what we're going to do is just come in here a little bit closer, go to a wireframe so we can see what we're doing. And then we're just going to up the amount. We might try 201 centimeters and see how that looks. And in a new map swatch, we're going to click on the diffuse and bitmap, and we're going to load in the clouds map, and we'll go OK to that. And there's our clouds map there. But what we also want to do is drag that map into the opacity, just as a copy, and we'll go OK to that. And what we'll get there is just the white cloud areas are going to show up on this material. And with it selected, we can tell in the background we've got the geometry selected here, clouds. We're just going to apply the material to the object. We'll give it a quick render. And you'll see there that we have our clouds now on our Earth map. I'll come out a little bit more. And there's our clouds on our Earth map. Now, we've got to do a little bit more to the clouds. What we can do here is just increase the self-illumination a little bit. Let's go to 15. And that just means we'll get a subtle hint of cloud on the darker side. I'll just move this across and give it a render. We'll just get a subtle hint of cloud on the darker side of the planet, which I think looks a bit better. And the next thing we need to do, we'll make sure we don't need any gloss, and we'll go into our maps and just get rid of our blurs and filters. And that was for the diffuse. We'll go into the opacity, get rid of that blur and the filter, give that another quick render, move it across a little bit to, yeah, that looks fine. And now what we're going to do is give it some depth through displacement. So we're just going to click on the maps, and then we're going to click on the displacement. We're going to give it a displacement of about, let's make it 3. We'll click on the map swatch and load in the same. We could always just drag and drop our Earth clouds material down onto displacement as a copy. And then when we go into that, we want to make sure that there is no alpha source being read there, and that's going to work fine. Now we'll just give that another quick render, and we might need to come out a little bit more on the size. Let's go 202 on the map size, on the geometry, just to give it a little bit more. I think that's working okay now. We'll come out of our globe a little bit. Yeah, I think that's going to work okay. We're getting some, we'll just highlight both and rotate around a little bit. We're starting to get some nice, you'll see that we actually are getting some nice shadows happening from the clouds. Just want to make sure our light is actually casting shadows the way we want it to. No. So let's just click on that, come back in. In fact, we'll go to our camera, hit C to bring up our camera, and we can show the standard mapping viewport for the clouds, and that will make them a little bit more see-through there. And we'll give that a render, and you'll see that we're getting some nice shadows. I'll zoom in a little bit more to the geometry. We're getting some nice shadows now from those clouds. But I think what we need to do is just reduce that size back to what it was before. We'll just go 201 on the size of the sphere and give that a render, and that's looking nice. And probably what we could do is just reduce the global opacity for those clouds. Just knock it back to, let's knock it back to 85 and click render there, and that's just going to, I don't really like it. Let's put that back to 100. I think it's the shadow density for the light, but I think it's fine for what we need at the moment. And what we might do also, just go to a top view, go to your lights and create an Omni light anywhere in the scene, and just rename that Omni light ambient. And then just in the light settings, come down to the advanced effects here and click ambient light, and then back up to multiplier. We want to make it let's make it 0.05 and go back to our camera view now. Just give that a bit of a render, and that's just going to give us a little bit of ambient light on the darker side of the planet. And that's going to work fine. I think we're looking pretty good here. We'll just come out on the camera a bit. That looks fine. Okay, so that's our material there for now, and what we'll do quickly is we'll just grab our Earth, and we can see that it's selected there, and we're just going to clone it. We'll call this Moon as a copy. We'll go OK, and then we'll hide unselected, so we're just left with the Moon here now. We'll hit M, new swatch, we'll just call it Moon, and hit the diffuse bitmap, and we'll use our Moon map. We'll go OK, and we'll apply it to our material or our object, and we'll just rotate the Moon around to something that we're a little bit more used to seeing, and that's probably okay. It's probably not 100% accurate as to what the Earth sees, given that the Moon doesn't rotate, so that's probably going to do for now. Now, the reason why I haven't scaled it down or anything like that, what we're going to do is render these objects out with just going to render these out separately, completely enclosed in the resolution, so that we can just position them in After Effects. And what I mean by that is make sure that none of the object is actually hanging out of the resolution there. And what we can actually do is bring up our render settings, and we're going to render out at double size. So just with these locked, I'm just going to punch in, say, 1440 and render that out, and it's huge, so I'm just going to slide it in to fit in the tutorial window here, and that's basically what it looks like there, and it has its alpha. So that's our Moon, and we'll just click on our save image box, and we'll come up to our renders. Make sure you know where you're saving these files to. There we go, and we'll call this Moon, and we're going to make it a TGA file. We'll go save and make sure pre-multiplied alpha and 32-bit is selected. We'll go OK to that, and we can close that now, and we can close the render settings, and we'll unhide all, and we'll hide selected, which is the Moon, and we'll just render this pass, which is the Earth. Just going to once again scale this down so we can see it in the window there. So there's our Earth, and what we want to do, I think it's probably too late to change the lighting given that we've done the Moon, but this will be fine. So there's our Earth there, and what we're going to do, we'll save that file as Earth, say diffuse, same again as a TGA, click save, OK, and then what we're going to do is grab our clouds layer and hide it, hide the geometry, and we're just going to render again, and you'll see now that we have a smooth, clean alpha. And what we're going to do is save this pass as our mask. We'll call it Earth Mask as a TGA. The color information is not that important. We just want the mask, and I'll show you why when we get into After Effects. Okay, so they're pretty much the only layers that we need to render. Given the time constraints for the tutorial, I'm going to keep it fairly simple. So we're just going to stay with those renders that we have there, and we'll come on over to After Effects. So here we are in After Effects, and we're in just a blank project, and we need to bring our footage in first. So let's double click on our project window and just bring our 3 maps in. We'll go OK to that, and we need pre-multiply with black, so we go OK, OK and OK for all 3 layers there. And just quickly I'll show you the reason why we needed a mask. If we'll bring up the diffuse and come in a little bit here, you'll see that some of the clouds are actually free floating up in space here, and as the Earth curves over, we want to get rid of that and have it a uniform sort of fall off the way it would normally look from outer space. So what we're going to do is grab our Earth diffuse and drag it down on top of the composition button here, which will create a new composition the same size as our Earth diffuse map, and it's actually called it Earth diffuse, and we'll leave it with Earth diffuse. Then we're going to bring our mask down, stick it on top, and we're going to use it as an alpha matte. And now if I go in there, you'll see that we don't have those free floating clouds anymore, and that's exactly what we want. So the next thing we can do is probably create our moon, and we'll just drag it down on top of a composition button here, and it becomes our moon pre-comp. So the next thing is to just create our master composition. So we'll just click on create new composition, and we'll call this we'll call it Earth Master, and we'll go for, let's go for an NTSC. Well, actually, let's just go for something like 720 by 408, and we want square pixels. We'll go OK, and that's just going to give us a sort of a nice widescreen aspect ratio there. And from the project window here, we're just going to bring our Earth diffuse down into the window, and it's quite large, so just scale it down. Use the shift button to keep it a uniform scale. I think scale it to something like that, and then I'm just going to bring it down, just pop it over to the left hand side there, and that's probably going to do nicely. And then we'll bring our moon down behind it or underneath it, and scale it down to about 1/3. Actually, it's going to need to go down a lot smaller than that to have it make sense. That's probably it there. So that's going to work fine. I'm at 50% here, so I'll make a bit of space, come in a little bit, so that we can see what we're doing. That's looking okay. Now the next thing we can do is bring our do our starfield background. So we'll just go Layer, New, Solid. Black is fine. We'll just name it Stars, and we'll go OK. We'll drag it to the bottom. We'll just isolate it in the view by hiding, by selecting the little icon here, and we'll bring up our effects. We're going to right click on our effects tab, and we're going to include some noise, fractal noise. And what we're going to do with the fractal noise is go straight into our transform and wind the scale down to, let's go down to 1 for now. And you get a very tight noise here. We're going to really ramp the contrast up a little bit, and then the brightness down, and voila, we have stars. And that's going to work nicely. Now what we can do also, Let's duplicate the moon layer, Control D, and let's switch it to an add, and that just brightens it up. But what we want to do is add an effect to that duplicated layer of a fast blur. We'll just blur it out a little bit more, something like that. Repeat on edges, and then just bring up T and knock back the opacity a little bit. And what that's just going to do is just going to give us a little bit of ethereal sort of glow to it. And what we can also do is grab the base moon layer again, Control D, and then take the bottom one, and I'll just isolate that so that you can see what we're doing here. We're just going to go fill. We're going to generate and fill, and it fills it with a red. And what we want to do is fill it with a sort of an off-white, an off-yellowy white, and then create a fast blur and just blur it out a little bit, not too much. That's probably going to do it. In fact, you'll notice what's happened there. If I keep blurring that out, it's getting a sharp edge on the sides here. So let's delete that layer, bring up our moon, and what we're going to do is go into the moon composition. We're going to duplicate it in there, Control D, and we're going to take the base layer and generate and fill. I'll just isolate it, and once again we'll make that white sort of off yellowy color, and then we're going to fast blur, fast blur, and then just give it a little bit of blur around the outside there, and that's going to work nicely. We could even, oh, that's probably going to work nicely there. And we can come back to our Earth Master now. Actually, in the moon we need to unhide the moon over the top, and then we'll just hit T. We'll bring that opacity down a little bit. It's just a bit of lighting, and what we could actually do is just grab it and slightly move it to the right a little bit more, and that's going to work just fine. So when we go back into the Earth Master now, we just get that light haze there. It's probably a little bit too bright. Let's bring it back, and that's going to work nicely. Back to the Earth Master, and we just get that nice little bit of haze on the edge there, and that's working fine. And with our planet, we're going to do a similar trick with the planet. We'll go into the Earth diffuse. We'll Control D on the diffuse and drag it to the bottom. We'll isolate it. We're going to generate a fill, and this time it's going to be a sort of a lightish blue, just in there, just white with a hint of blue, and then we're going to blur it out a little bit with a fast blur. Blur it out. We need to make sure that the alpha is off. No alpha. And that's probably going to work nicely there, and we'll unhide our Earth, and we'll do the same. We're just going to slightly move it to the left, about there, and then bring up T for opacity, and really just drop it right back, probably around about 18, something like that. Come back to our Earth Master, and we're just getting this nice little bit of haze on the right hand side, and that's going to work nicely. We could probably get a little tricky here. We'll go to the Earth diffuse again. We'll Control D. This is just a little bit experimental, and there's our Earth diffuse there. And what we can do is invert the alpha, which gives us this edge, just a really tight sort of edge there. We're going to fill the diffuse with a generate fill. We're going to give it that same light blue white hue there, and then we're going to blur it. Well, we won't blur that actually, we're just going to grab the mask and add a fast blur to the mask. And what that does is just gives us a nice little bit of a blur in, like so, and we'll just see if we can choke it a little bit of simple choking in the matte. Well, we probably don't need it, and we might just add a fast blur onto the actual matted diffuse layer here, just to give it a bit of softness around the edge. Repeat on edge, and let's go back to the Earth Master now. Whoop, we need to unhide everything here, and what we're going to do is just knock this back, bring up T, and just knock that back, just like that. And if we come back into the Earth Master, it's made a subtle difference, but I think it's worked. I'll switch it on and off. You can see that it just gives us that nice little sort of highlighted rim around the top. We can even sort of pump it up a little bit more, and we can switch the overlay, switch to a screen mode, and there you can see that it's looking quite nicely. So let's go back to our Earth Master, and that's probably all we need to do. I mean, there's a million other things that we can do, but really the purpose of this tutorial was to explore that Falloff map in 3D Studio Max and the power of that Falloff map. So have a good play with it. It's very powerful. I think we'll touch on it again in a future tutorial relative to character mapping. One great example is the hero suits in the Incredibles always had this orangey yellow rim light that was always sort of on the suit itself, and the materials that the suits were made of always sort of gave you the impression that they were that spandex sort of feel. Well, they used Falloff lighting for that effect, no matter what was happening in the scene relative to rear lighting or kicker lighting. You always got that sort of tight little rim around the edge of the object or the superhero. So that was done through Falloff. It's also a very powerful tool for getting for building materials like velvet, felt, satin. So we'll probably touch on the Falloff material again, but I really wanted to show you the power of using it for this specific effect, and that it's a great way to use a dynamic process for mapping the world using a day-night map scenario. Because remember, in 3D we could rotate this globe around, and what would happen is as the areas fall across the Terminator into darkness, the lights of the cities would start to come on, and that is that's something that can't be done unless you use some sort of Falloff type light driven mapping. So have a good play with it. Hope you enjoy the Falloff map, and don't forget to check the forums and join up at the website. And this tutorial, the tutorial files will be available for this tutorial to members, and I hope to see you soon. So until next time, bye for now.